Greetings, this is Matt Faiello, and I'm back with another Intersight Managed Mode Expert Series video. Today we're talking about another domain policy, the Ethernet Network Control Policy. So we're going to review some slides and cover some key aspects of the parameters that you set for this policy, and then follow that with a quick demo. All right, so let's talk about this policy in terms of domain policies. So here's the kicker on this. This policy says Ethernet Network Control Policy, but you're only going to see this policy on the domain side if you configure appliance uplink ports or port channels. So I think that's where the confusion lies. As we go through this policy, and it's a nested policy, it's part of the port policy if you select the appliance port role, okay. But I think it's confusing because you're wanting to configure things in this policy that really don't apply to appliance ports. So 3/4 of this policy is not going to be you're not going to be concerned with on the domain policy side. Having said that, this policy is a switch hitter. It also appears on the server policy side, and you can configure this per VNIC, Ethernet VNIC, okay, and then all the settings will make sense. So we're still going to go through the policy here, but I'm going to brush over most of the settings, and then we'll focus on those settings in more detail when we create the server policy. All right, so when you go to create this policy, one of the first things you'll see in the policy is the Cisco Discovery Protocol. And although I didn't mark not applicable, I basically could mark it non-applicable because we don't have anything direct attached storage wise in Cisco that would support the Cisco Discovery Protocol. It is a proprietary protocol, so no third-party pure NetApp. Nobody else is going to be supporting that. Okay, so highly unlikely that you're going to enable CDP. As for MAC register mode, not applicable for the domain policy use of this policy, appliance ports. Okay, and we'll talk more about that setting on the server policy side when we go to configure this policy for VIX, for virtual Ethernet interfaces. Okay, moving on, we have a setting in the policy. It says action on uplink fail. Again, this is not really applicable for appliance ports, so just keep the default setting there. It's not going to be looked at anyways. This is applicable to Ethernet uplinks, so we will talk about this when we discuss the server policies for Ethernet network control. Here's another setting, max security, not applicable for the domain policy side, but we will come back and visit this setting on the server policy side. Okay, so finally, we're at a setting that's applicable to appliance uplink ports and port channels, and LLDP is a standard. It allows vendor interoperability, so you probably want to consider enabling transmit and receive on that. Again, this policy on the domain policy side is used with uplink ports and port channels. And the recommendations is pretty much keep the defaults except for LLDP, in which case I would most likely recommend enabling transmit and receive on that. Okay, as with all IMM Expert Series videos, we kind of like to map out where that policy is used graphically. So we have our domain profile on the left here. It accesses one or more port policies, like fabric-specific port policies. Now, if you configure an appliance uplink port or port channel, okay, then you will see the ability to select the Ethernet network control policy for appliance ports and port channels. Standard Ethernet uplink, you're not going to see this policy to be selectable. We'll do that on the VNIC side with the server policies. So hopefully this clears up some questions you may have had as I started to do this video. It was a policy that caused more questions than provided answers, and the documentation is all kind of written from an Ethernet VNIC perspective. It really didn't address the appliance port use case. So I wanted to make sure that was clear to everyone. Okay, so let's go to a short demo here, and we're in Intersight Infrastructure Service, and we are in Policies, and we're going to create a policy. And I like to filter down, so if I select my UCS domain policy filter, you'll see Ethernet network control. But if I also went to UCS server policies, you'll notice it's there as well, Ethernet network control. And let's go back to the domain. Let's go ahead and click that guy. Click Start. We have to give it a name. Click Next. And again, about 75% of these settings really not applicable for appliance port uplinks, uplink ports or port channels. All right, so keep everything default. This is all going to be ignored, this first part. This one likely, you're going to have your link level discovery protocol enabled. But if you have any doubts, check with your storage admin and then click Create. Okay, so that concludes this Intersight Managed Mode Expert Series video discussing Ethernet network control policies from a domain policy perspective. I hope you found it to be informative. At the very least, I hope it cleared up some perhaps confusion that you had on why you need this policy within a domain profile. So with that, please check out our additional Intersight Managed Mode Expert Series videos. And thank you.